Hey there, Griff Hamlin here. Welcome, thanks for joining me today. In today's video, we're going to talk about something that I get a lot of questions about, and I know it's a big pain point for a lot of people struggling to learn how to play a blues solo, and that is how to start your blues solo. How do you know where to start, when to start? We're going to actually probably talk more about when to start than what to start with. So what I've done is I've gone through several very popular tunes that get played at local jam sessions. Tunes like Stormy Monday, The Thrill Is Gone, Crossroads, Pride and Joy, Red House, that type of tune. I went through about 20 of them and just listened to how they start and what either melodic or rhythmic devices were used and kind of put them into categories. Now what's kind of cool here, I often say that you shouldn't start on beat one. And in fact, there were only 2 instances where the solos that I was examining actually started on beat 1. And in general, that was the unusual thing. Typically, it was a lead-in to beat 1. So we're going to handle the when in a pretty easy way. It's either going to be the 2 that started on beat 1 or one of the others that didn't start on beat 1. And I'm not going to go through every single one, but you're going to get the idea by the time we're done. Now, the other thing that is critical is understanding and knowing where your root note is and what pattern you're going to start from. And in almost every instance, it's going to be the common box 1, box 2, house pattern, 4-note solo pattern, whatever you want to call those regions of the fretboard. That's going to be the spot, okay? So the first thing that you're going to have to be able to do is you have to be able to find and know where root notes are, okay? In any 12-bar blues, we have basically 3 chords, right? So if we were in A, we have A7, D7, E7, right? Now, the first chord in a blues in the 12-bar form is the key, okay? So if it turns out that you're playing a 12-bar blues in the key of A, the first chord in the form is going to be the A. Now occasionally a blues will start what we call from the 5. It'll have some sort of an introduction, okay? There can be a variety of introductions out there, but in our situation, we got to ignore that, okay? Because you want to just find the key. Now in a blues, usually the key is obvious. Somebody says, yeah, we're going to play blues in C, or we're going to play blues in E. Well, the E or the C, whatever they say, that's the key. Okay, you need to find that note on your first and second string, because that, my friend, is where, almost guaranteed, where you're going to start. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say, for example, that we're in the key of A. There's an A at the 5th fret, and there's an A at the 10th fret on the 2nd string. Okay, how about B? Okay, well, there you go. Let's say we were going to start, let's do one of the 2 that start on the beat, right? The Thrill Is Gone. 1, 2, 3, 4. And he just hits that note. And then he switches over to the other B. And that's the gist of it. So it starts on that root. Now, you could start from there, but he's basically going back over to box 1. So if you're starting on the 2nd string root note and you're using your 3rd finger and you want to think blues scale, minor blues scale, that's box 2. Or it's the 4-note solo pattern. There's the 4-note solo pattern. If we add this note with my middle finger on the 3rd string, we've got what I call the minor house pattern, or if we continue it down, we have box 2. And of course, if we go to that root and your first finger's on it, we have box 1. Okay, so once you have found your root note, you got to look at, okay, well, how are you hitting it? If you're using your 3rd finger on the 2nd string version of the root, you're going to be looking at a minor sound, box 2, you know, or the 4-note solo pattern. If you're starting on the first string with your first finger, you're playing box 1. Okay, now in one instance, it did something a little bit different, and that was the beginning of Stormy Monday, the Fillmore recording. It's in the key of G. So using that 8th fret, the 2nd string G, instead of playing that, you can imagine, if you imagine your first finger there, and this gets more of a major sound. I call this the major house pattern. And I have another video somewhere else about the house pattern. But what he does is starts with, just bends that first note up. So there's the G, go up 2 frets to the 10th fret and bend it up a whole step. And you get that lick right there. But it starts right on the beat on what we call the 3rd of the chord, okay? So we only have those 2 instances. The Thrill Is Gone, where we start right on the beat with the 2nd string root, and we have the Stormy Monday, where we start right on the beat, right on beat 1, but with the 3rd of the chord. So in either instance, you're definitely dealing with a chord tone. More often than not, you're going to find out that we're using the root note. That using the 3rd of the chord was unusual, but it's a nice touch, and I know a lot of people really love that solo. So that may be a reason why, starting with that major 3rd. It's a really nice sound that you don't normally hear. Okay. Now, typically, you're going to work your way into the downbeat where you're going to hit the root. Okay. So let's look at an example. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so A is the key that I'm in. And I'm going to work my way up. The A at the 4th string, 7th fret. Do a little 5 to 6 hammer on grace note. C to C sharp on the 2nd string. E, F sharp. And then I'm going to land here at my A root note. So 1, 2, 3. And that's a great way to start a slow blues. It also works great, you know, on a up-tempo. And you might want to go from one to the other. That's a really common move. If we look at something like I'm Tore Down, which is in the key of C, I want a 2, I want 2, 2. He does basically that same thing. So he takes just the last part, but then that's the downbeat. So I've got the 8th to 10th. Okay, but instead of playing the whole thing, it just plays this much. Okay, so I've got the G to A, the 8 to 10. There's my C, and then jump up to the other C. Now you might wonder why to do that, but there's a really good reason to do that, and that has to do with adding vibrato, or as I like to say, adding a little sugar to it. If I play the root on the 1st string, it's actually a little bit more difficult to add that vibrato. If I hit it on the 2nd string note, I can mute here so I can rake, and I can shake it a little more, get a little more sugar out of it, without really having to go through too much trouble. It's just easier. I'm not going to accidentally pull it off the fretboard. So it's just a little bit easier to manipulate the note on the 2nd string. Okay, so again, that version, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Now, of course, I could mix them together. I could take, you know, what I did down here, and I could put it here. 1, 2, 3. Or I could take what I did down here and I could put it there. But in either instance, I'm doing a pickup onto the root on the downbeat. the root on the downbeat is going to be a really common common theme here. Let's look at something like Red House. All right, so if we're in B flat, the way he starts out is again, you know, thinking about getting to that B flat on the second string. So, but it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and that's how it starts. So just going down in box 2, or the house pattern, whatever you like. So it's that 10th fret, the F, 3 and 4 and 1. Now, of course, from there, it's Hendrix, you know, so it's all over the place. But that's how it starts, and that's what we're talking about, is how things get started, okay? So let's take a look at another one in a straight feel. Let's talk about Crossroads. Now, Crossroads, when he comes in for the first solo, it's in A. So he uses box 1, but based off of the pinky. Okay, so if I base box 1 off my pinky, I get a major sound. So 1, 2, and you hear I get that. So that's a root. It's based off of this root, but it's actually this root. So here at the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. 1, 2, and that's just a 2nd and 4th string, or 2nd and 4th fret. Pretty straightforward. And of course from there, it can go anywhere. You know, whatever you want to do at that point. But again, we're just talking about getting started. So for most people, once you get started, it's not too hard to keep going. It's just a matter of getting started in the first place. All right, let's look at one more, which is Texas Flood by Stevie Ray Vaughan. This one's in the key of G. But of course, he tended to tune down a half step, so you may want to try it in F sharp if you want to play it along with him. But we have, again, that sort of box 2. So it's all starting with that root note again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. It's just that 8, 6, 8. So he kind of delays the return. What I wanted to show you about this is that that's actually the downbeat. So he sort of delays that return to the root, but it still happens, and it still happens almost immediately, just not right on the downbeat. Okay, but that's one of those things that happens. Now, one other last little thing, another little Stevie Ray Vaughan trick, is you could actually use a chord, a little chord segment. If you look at the beginning of the solo on Pride and Joy, now I'm going to play an E. Again, he tuned down a half step. Okay, so he's grabbing, if you can imagine, an E chord, but just grab the 12th, just the 2nd and 3rd strings of it. And I like to use my 2nd and 3rd fingers so that my 1st finger can kind of lag behind and mute stuff out. This allows you to hit it, but only get the notes you want. These just mute. And what he does is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So it starts off on beat 4 again and works into the chord. Okay, so again, using that pickup from beat 4, or maybe the of 3, into beat 1, which is going to be, in this case, it's both the 3rd and the 5th of the chord. So it's pretty obviously their chord tones, okay? So there's several different ways that you can start a solo, and what happens is as you start to go through some other tunes, you're going to notice that they pretty much all fall into one of these couple of different categories. Either they're starting right on the beat with the root note, or in the case of Stormy Monday, another chord tone. Or you're going to find that they are using a pickup into beat 1, and still at beat 1, they're going to hit with the root note. It's more common than not to hit that root note on the downbeat, and it's more common than not to play a couple of notes to lead into it. So if you can remember that and that alone, you've got a big start on how to start your own blues solo. So I hope you found this helpful. Hope you get something out of it, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.